Recording.
Hello, everyone. I am here today with Christine Franklin, a fellow coach and a fellow, practitioner in all things that related to, caring for ourselves and our minds and all of those topics. And today, the two of us are talking about the holidays and specifically about how to take care of ourselves during the holidays, because, self-care is something that kind of falls off of the radar when when holiday and end of the year time comes. So before we jump into the topic, I'm just going to introduce myself really quickly in case you're watching this on Christine's webpage or on her Instagram and you don't know who I am. I am a Maria Stoyanova, and I am a burnout prevention and self-care coach. My business name and the brand where you can find under which you can find me on social media is called Rest Over Grind. So on Instagram, I go by rest_over_grind, and my website is restovergrind.com. With that being said, Christine, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. And it's really great to be here with you and with everyone who's joining us. And I am Christine Franklin. I am a health coach, and I typically work with busy business owners. So clearly, Marie and I have a lot in common. And the main thing that I usually work with clients on is how to fit healthy habits into their lifestyle in a way that is sustainable and feels aligned with them. So I think this topic is so timely and so helpful for people who become busy. Even if you aren't typically busy at other times of the year, this tends to be a very busy time. So I'm very happy to be talking about this.
Yes, that's great. So I don't know if we want to start by kind of giving our own, because self-care is one of those terms that's kind of tossed out there in a million different contexts. So I don't know if we want to each give our own perspective on what self-care is, and then we can talk about how fitting it into the holidays is feasible and is helpful. Do you want to get started?
Sure. For me, self-care is more than, having a break and treating yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great. That tends to happen occasionally if you think about it in that way. Maybe you might squeeze it in once a week, which is still good. But I tend to think of self-care more in terms of daily practices. What do we do every day to honor ourselves and honor our needs? And that can show up in so many different ways. So it's not just about having a nice bath with some candles and relaxing, which is great. But in our day-to-day lives, even from the time we wake up, how do we keep our self-love in the forefront of our minds? And how do we put that into our entire day before we even get to any kind of relief that we have at the end of the day? What about you, Maria?
I love that definition. I mean, my definition is very similar. Like you said, I definitely don't think of self-care as, bubble baths and pedicures, which is kind of like the way it's marketed most often, which all of those things are great. I'm not trying to, say that bubble baths are bad. They're amazing. But to me, true self-care is sort of taking, like you said, taking care of yourself and specifically taking care of your brain and of sort of being curious and compassionate with your thought patterns and being able to look at them and see where they're maybe not helpful and see how you can perhaps change them and question them. So, all the bubble baths in the world are not going to help you if you're taking a bubble bath and still thinking the same thoughts that are causing you a lot of stress, right?
Yes.
So what's going to be a lot
true.
more helpful is sitting down, processing your emotions, and sort of looking at those thoughts and thinking of, what is serving me out of those and what isn't. So
Right.
very similar definitions, I think.
Yes, I totally agree. So what about the holidays? What comes to mind for you when we think about self-care with the busyness of the holidays in mind?
Yeah, I mean, to me, self-care during the holidays is really sort of checking in with yourself frequently and figuring out what you need on any specific day to care for yourself. And I'm not here to give you, a list of things to do because it's different for everyone. So I can talk about what works for me, but it's not like, that's the prescription for everyone. But it's really just sort of checking in, and it's whether it's I need some time alone, I need some time to meditate, I need some time to journal. It could be all sorts of things, or it could be just like I need some time to watch TV or scroll social media. I think that can also be self-care. If your sort of brain is very tired, sometimes it needs to check off for a bit, and you need to do that. But it's kind of being curious with yourself, not expecting it to look the same as everyone else's self-care, and also not expecting it to look the same every day, because different days you might have different needs. So for me, when I travel and visit family, it is sort of this quiet time of setting myself aside, checking in, and saying, sometimes I just need to lie down in bed for 10 minutes and process a bunch of feelings. Other days I need to journal for a bit and write down all my thoughts. It's kind of the other days I need to go for a long walk. Those are some examples for me, but I think the key is kind of setting this time aside to check in and to then honor whatever comes up for you that is helpful that day, and to kind of manage your thoughts around any guilt you might have for doing that, because sometimes we have guilt of I'm here to see family, I'm being selfish by taking time for myself, those types of thoughts that are untrue and unhelpful. What
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. I mean, in almost anything, I don't believe in one size fits all kinds of solutions. So we're very much on the same page. And I definitely adapt pretty much everything to how I feel at a given day or a time. So yeah, it's so important to think about what will work for us and what feels like a break or just a chance to breathe for,
Yes.
for me individually. And it definitely will look very different from one person to the other. So it's really about tapping into self-awareness. That's the place where it starts. So,
Hmm.
making sure that in all the busyness, we remember, oh yeah, I need to check in with myself, just as you said, but really, making that a solid ingrained part of what you do every day so that you're constantly checking in and you're constantly recognizing, okay, I feel a little overwhelmed right now. I've had a lot of people around me. It's time
Yes,
to retreat for a little bit.
exactly. I love that.
And we all deserve that. There's no reason to feel guilty about it at all because, we can't just keep giving out without taking time to fill back up for ourselves. So, for sure, it's all about being mindful of how you're feeling at different times and then having not necessarily a fixed plan, but knowing that if I feel this way, I need to take some kind of break.
Yes, I love that. And
Yeah.
one more thing to the point of what you said, we need to take care of ourselves before, giving time and attention to others. Whenever, clients or I myself have thought, it's selfish to take time for myself, it's actually very unselfish, because think about it this way, like, would your family rather see you 15 minutes less, but see this, calmer and less overwhelmed version of you? Or would they, rather spend these like extra 15 or 50 or however long you need minutes, but have you, kind of a little bit frazzled and stressed? You're sort of giving this gift to the people around you too when you're more present and you're more grounded and
Yeah, that's beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah, because you're just a lot more fun to be around when you're calmer and relaxed
exactly.
anyway. I mean, realistically,
Ex-
who wants to be around somebody that's feeling frazzled or not really paying attention to what's being said?
exactly.
It's no fun. So we honor ourselves and we honor our relationships with others at the same time when we take care of ourselves. So that's very
Absolutely.
important. And
Absolutely.
another thing that I think is important to keep in mind is how to pace yourself so that you don't get overwhelmed. So recognizing that this is a busy time and
Mhm.
there is going to be a lot that you think of that you want to get done. There are people that you might want to see, but how can you go into that with a plan for taking it bit by bit rather than
Mhm.
trying to chop everything off your to-do list in 2 days or
Yes.
trying to visit more than one home in a day and that kind of thing, which makes you feel like you're rushing around and makes you feel like things are kind of crazy. But if you know
Yes.
that you've had that experience before, how about thinking about what that felt like? And maybe you don't want to repeat that this year. So you think, okay, so how can I intentionally slow down the pace of what I'm doing instead of
Mm,
leaving just 2 days to get stuff ordered or shopping for gifts? Maybe I'll give myself a week. So I'll start doing it a
mhm.
little bit earlier so that I can pace myself instead of being overwhelmed at the last minute, especially if it runs into the last minute. You know, that last minute rush is
Yes,
awful.
I love that.
Yes. So I think it's really helpful to be intentional about how you're going to pace things that you know you have to do because you do them pretty much every year. So how can we make
Absolutely.
that easier, right?
Exactly. Planning ahead, sort of knowing what to expect. And in that vein, also in terms of knowing what to expect, I think another important thing is sort of knowing what to expect from, interactions with people you know and love, but who, bit of holiday stress or a lot of holiday stress actually comes from, these interactions with family members where you might be, expecting them to act a certain way, even though you very well know that they won't because they've never acted that way, but you somehow still, kind of an example from my life, for instance, is, every time I go home, my mom makes a comment about my weight or how much I eat. That's just a fact. And every time I go, I'm like, I really want her to not do this, even though she's done it for years and years, every single time. So sort of kind of going into it with my teacher calls this the, of course they did sort of framework. It's sort of course she's going to say it because that's what she's always done. And kind of going into it, knowing it's going to happen rather than sort of bracing yourself for it, then being annoyed that it happened,
Yeah.
kind of planning ahead of how you want to think and feel once it happens, knowing it's definitely going to happen. That kind of
Yes.
framework.
Yeah. I think pretty much everybody probably has somebody in their life that's like that,
Mhm.
or say something like that at some point. Like for me, I don't have children. So for my husband and I, it's not about family members usually, but other people, friends of the family who might be over for, some festivity or some gathering. And there's going to be somebody who's going to ask, so when are you going to have children?
100%. My husband and I don't have children either, and I can so relate to this. There's always someone who really, really wants to know why you don't have children and when you're
Yes.
planning to. Yes.
And they seem intensely curious about it, right?
Yes,
So
very much so.
yes, so it does help to have a strategy, yeah, excuse me, ahead of time about how you're going to handle that because gosh, if you go through that every year or every gathering,
Yes,
it's going to be pretty, exhausting. You're not going to
absolutely.
enjoy your time with people in the same way. So if you know that's going to happen, just plan for how you're going to let it, roll off your back
Yeah.
and maybe have your response ready ahead of time. So you don't even have to
Yes,
really think about it and
exactly.
go through all those emotions. You just go into this mode of, okay, I know this is going to happen and I have a plan for how I'm going to deal with it. So I
Yeah.
totally relate to what you're saying.
And even if the plan is, I know I'm going to feel annoyance in the moment, that's also normal, but
Yes.
sort of planning ahead for it and not beating yourself up when it happens and being like, why am I annoyed again? Just say, of course I'm going to have some thoughts, I'm going to be annoyed for a while, and then I'll, work through them. Sort
Yes.
of even sort of giving yourself that, I think is
So
very helpful.
true. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
there's also the concept of boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
So you might get that one random question and you might know how to deal with it. But there may be other instances where people may be asking you to do some extra things. And maybe they're the same people who ask you to do these extra things every year.
Right, exactly.
So, one thing I've learned over the years is the value of saying no
Mm.
politely, gently, but
Yes.
still setting a clear boundary for what you will take on
Yes.
and what you want, or maybe you'll do something but on a smaller scale, not exactly the way the person may have wanted, but it still gets done because you know what's manageable for you. So
Mm-hmm.
setting that kind of boundary that really honors what is realistic for you is important.
100%. And around that also just managing, like being prepared for some thoughts to come up about, guilt or things like that, and being ready to manage them. I think
Yes.
that's also helpful. The last thing I would say on, how to make holidays more less stressful, more enjoyable, take care of yourself, is, don't expect the holidays to be, one big Christmas movie where everyone is always happy and singing in the streets and baking cookies, right? Like the holidays are like any other time of the year, meaning you have some positive emotion and then you have some negative emotion, and sort of being prepared for that. And I think a lot of the time we kind of go into it with inflated expectations, and then we feel bad that we had some negative emotion. And like one strategy for me that's been super, super helpful is kind of replacing but with and, meaning that one negative experience doesn't negate all the positive ones. So instead of, let's say, saying, I had a lovely dinner, but my mom asked about my weight, you can say, my mom asked about my weight and we had a lovely dinner. Both things happened.
Yes.
Kind of like reframes it for your brain that, it's not always lost if one unpleasant things happens. What do you think about that?
I love that. I absolutely love that. That's so positive. And that's exactly the way, it's important to set up our lives to make sure that we remain optimistic and positive, and our self-talk is also positive, because sometimes we're so hard on ourselves.
Yes.
And at this time of the year, I also tend to think about people who may be grieving or who may have lost a loved one recently, and this may be their first Christmas without them. And so it may be difficult to feel happy and bubbly all the time, and yet you're around people who are being happy and bubbly.
Yeah.
And it may be hard to feel positive at this time as well. So in the same way we were talking about all the things related to self-care, this is also an important time to take time for yourself. So if at some point you don't feel like you can be around people and you just need to step away, honor yourself and make sure you do that, because there's no shame in it. You have your own journey. The others in the room have their own journeys, and you need to honor where you are in your journey.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. Yes, that's so important, because it is, the holidays aren't inherently joyful for everyone. It might be tough. So absolutely just honor yourself, honor your needs, share with someone if you feel ready to, and if you feel safe to share. And if not, just take yourself aside and honor your feelings and your needs. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then when you can, then you can switch into the more positive side of celebrating the time that you had with this person and celebrating the memories that you share. So of course, your emotions will vary. That's perfectly normal. So just honor wherever you are at a given time.
Absolutely. I love that. I think that's a great note to conclude on.
Yeah.
Honor yourself where you're at any point.
Yes, I totally agree. It's, I think the root of self-care, just as you were saying.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yes. So I believe we've covered quite a bit today.
Yes. Hopefully we've made someone's holiday a little bit, easier and more compassionate, like we've helped someone be more compassionate towards themselves this holiday season.
Yes. So maybe this will be the one holiday season that's a bit different and a bit easier. And then going forward with these tips in mind, then every other one after this will be equally easy and, more joyful.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today. Thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you soon.
See you soon.
Bye.